empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Bruce Lee. Every person who gains influence eventually meets the same quiet problem. The world begins to recognize their shape. At first, this feels like success. People understand what you stand for, what to expect from you, what your strengths are. But the same clarity that makes you trusted also makes you predictable. Once your outline is visible, others can plan around it. What was once mastery becomes a pattern, and patterns are always exploited. Power lives in motion. It depends on your ability to respond faster than those who watch you. The moment you are defined by reputation, method, or temperament, you surrender a portion of that motion. Friends, rivals, and even admirers start anticipating you. They design conversations to guide you toward the reactions they expect. They rehearse the version of you they think exists, and you begin to play that role for them without realizing it. In time, the role replaces the person. What began as control turns into choreography. History provides the same warning again and again. Sparta built an army so rigid that it could not evolve once the world changed. Rome's discipline hardened into bureaucracy, its adaptability lost beneath ceremony. Napoleon's genius for movement became an obsession with grand battles fought in full view of Europe. The show mattered more than the result, and the show destroyed him. Strength became habit, and habit became ruin. Power dies not through weakness, but through inflexibility. You might believe that identity, the certainty of who you are, is what grants stability. It does, but only for a moment. The mind that cannot step outside its own reflection becomes a prisoner of pride. The strategist who insists on always being bold cannot retreat when retreat is wisdom. The leader who must appear decisive will charge ahead, even when the field demands silence. To be powerful is to resist the need to perform consistency. It is to understand that steadiness lies in inner intention, not in outward form. Formlessness does not mean confusion or deceit. It means maintaining an internal clarity so strong that it can express itself through 1,000 faces. The oak tree that never bends breaks in a storm. The reed that yields survives. Formlessness is the discipline of bending at the right time. It is the ability to shed an old method before it becomes visible to the enemy, to abandon a success before it turns into a weakness. The formless person is not without structure. They carry a private structure, one that others cannot map. Think of how easily people try to categorize you. Colleagues say, you're the logical one, the calm one, the creative one. Each label feels flattering until you notice how it limits you. The moment you believe it, you begin defending it. You reject actions that don't fit the image and slowly stop growing beyond it. The wise learn to treat every description as provisional. Today, you may be one thing. Tomorrow, the circumstances will demand another. The consistency that matters is purpose, not appearance. To assume formlessness is to live with awareness that every fixed identity carries an expiration date. What made you effective at one stage of life will not serve at the next. The friends who once depended on your steadiness may one day need your unpredictability instead. The same tactics that earned you victories will invite defeat if repeated too long. When you feel yourself becoming known, when your rhythm becomes easy to read, that is the signal to change tempo. You cannot avoid taking form. Even water conforms to its container, but you can refuse to let the container define you. You can choose when to solidify and when to dissolve. The practice is subtle. Hold your principles quietly, reveal your plan slowly, and let people misunderstand you if they must. They will aim for the image they think is you, not the person you have already become. Power that lasts behaves like a current under the surface, steady, directed, yet invisible. It shapes everything it touches without ever revealing its own outline. The moment you believe your reflection, you stop moving. The moment you stop moving, you start dying. To remain powerful, you must learn to change form before necessity forces you to. The shape of power is the absence of shape, a living intelligence that refuses to be drawn, measured, or predicted. Every structure eventually believes it deserves to keep its shape. That belief is what ruins it. Water has no such illusion. It accepts every contour it meets, then moves on without memory. When the cup shatters, the water does not mourn the cup. It simply finds a new path. That is the model of formless power. To live and lead like water means holding a quiet distinction between your essence and your expression. Your essence is the aim. Survival, influence, mastery, understanding, whatever core principle drives you. Your expression is the method, and methods must change. The inexperienced confuse the two. They begin to worship the vessel that once carried them safely, mistaking the method for the mission. You can watch this mistake anywhere people gather to compete. A company keeps its old strategy because it once worked. A politician repeats the slogans that first won attention. A person insists on being authentic, even when authenticity has become self-parody. The vessel becomes sacred, and sacred things become brittle. Fluidity is not weakness. It is disciplined observation joined with the courage to discard what no longer fits. You study the terrain, sense where resistance lies, and flow where there is space. You stop fighting walls that will not move, and instead let your movement carve around them. Over time, the wall wears down, and you remain. Power that endures does so by erosion, not explosion. Consider generals who mastered this art. Sun Tzu advised that the army should be like water, for water has no constant shape. His point was not poetic, it was practical. The general who fixes his strategy before seeing the field fights an imaginary war. The general who adapts mid-battle fights the real one. Centuries later, Musashi wrote that a swordsman must flow with the opponent's rhythm until the instant comes to strike. He meant that rigidity of plan invites death. Both men taught that form is the luxury of those who expect easy conditions. The world rarely offers them. In ordinary life, the same principle applies. Imagine a negotiation. The rigid negotiator enters determined to win on a single term. The formless one enters to understand movement. The other side's fears, ambitions, tempo. They adjust tone and timing until the field tilts naturally in their favor. Nothing appears forced. To outsiders, it looks effortless. What they do not see is the discipline behind the ease. Hours of observation, constant recalibration, the willingness to change stance the instant it stops working. That is formlessness in practice, an unbroken awareness that bends without surrendering purpose. Most people fail to adapt because they mistake consistency for integrity. They think changing direction means betrayal of the self. In truth, the opposite is worse. When you cling to a single manner of acting, you betray your intelligence. Integrity is not sameness. It is alignment between your intent and the conditions you face. If the bridge ahead has collapsed, integrity demands that you find another way across. Only pride calls that disloyalty. There will be times when others demand that you take shape for their comfort. They will ask what you stand for, what you believe, what you plan to do next. Give them enough to steady them, but never enough to bind you. Let your words open options instead of closing them. The purpose is not to deceive, but to preserve freedom of movement. If they cannot predict you, they cannot pin you down. And what cannot be pinned down cannot be destroyed. Yet adaptability has its cost. If you change too often, you appear insincere. If you flow without direction, you dissolve. The art lies in balance, a firm internal line with flexible edges. Water obeys gravity. It always knows where down is. But within that law, it can take infinite shapes. Likewise, your actions must follow one guiding principle, perhaps advancement, understanding, or creation. While the form of those actions shifts constantly, hold the principle like a compass, not a cage. Ask yourself, what methods have become your vessel? Which habits or titles once served you but now constrain you? The teacher trapped by his own lessons, the leader strangled by his own legend. Each believed their vessel was permanent. Break one pattern this week, if only to remind yourself that you can. Do something that unsettles the expectations others hold of you. Watch how quickly they adjust, how easily the world makes room for the version of you that moves. To be like water is to accept transience without fear. It is to understand that form is temporary, but movement can be eternal. The world will always build new walls. Your task is to remain the element that finds a way through them. When you learn to change shape without losing direction, you will see that freedom and power are the same thing. The vessel was never the point. It was only the moment you needed to pass through. You can learn almost everything about formlessness by watching how people fight. A rigid mind goes to war the same way it goes through life, believing that victory comes from building stronger walls. But the longer those walls stand, the easier they are to map. The adaptable mind, by contrast, treats battle as motion. It wins not by overpowering the opponent, but by confusing the space between them. When Genghis Khan led his armies across Asia, he commanded no marble fortresses, no permanent cities, no slow supply trains. His empire lived on horseback. His warriors attacked from nowhere, vanished into the horizon, and returned from their direction entirely. Traditional generals looked for a line of battle. The Mongols gave them a fog. They faked retreats, split into multiple columns, and struck from impossible distances. The method was simple. Let the enemy waste strength fighting ghosts. By the time the real force appeared, the opponent had already exhausted himself fighting illusions. Centuries later, the same logic played out in different forms. The guerrilla fighter uses it when he moves through villages that offer no target. The entrepreneur uses it when she changes the rules of a market before competitors understand the game. The thinker uses it when he refuses to be cornered by ideology. Every successful tactician learns to be both present and invisible, to be the cause of disruption without becoming the center of it. Rigid power wants to be seen. It craves acknowledgement, ceremony, and borders. But the moment you can see a thing clearly, you can measure it, and once measured, it can be defeated. The power that lasts hides its mechanisms. It operates through uncertainty, through reputation, through movement that never repeats in quite the same way. In military history, this is called maneuver warfare. In life, it is strategy without vanity. You never offer your whole self at once. You give a shape long enough to draw attention, then dissolve it before it hardens. Think of how a skilled negotiator speaks. A mix of clarity and ambiguity, enough to guide the conversation, but never enough to reveal the limits of her position. Every word opens one door and quietly closes another. The same principle explains how certain leaders maintain influence long after their time should have passed. They know how to leave space between what they mean and what others interpret. That space is where power lives. When people argue about what you really think, you remain the reference point for the debate. When they believe they fully understand you, they stop needing you. Formlessness, then, is not disappearance. It is selective presence. The Mongol armies existed. Their enemies simply couldn't predict where. The adaptable leader exists. His rivals just can't agree on what he will do next. You don't erase yourself from the field. You blur your outline so that no one can tell where your influence begins or ends. The opposite attitude is visible everywhere. The politician who insists on being consistent until the world changes around him. The artist who repeats a winning formula until the audience moves on. The company that keeps expanding the product everyone has already stopped needing. They die publicly because they need to be seen. They cannot step back into shadow long enough to re-emerge as something new. Power is a rhythm, not a monument. Every system, military, political, personal, demands alternating visibility and retreat. Appear too little and you're forgotten. Appear too often and you're predictable. The ghost in the field knows when to let the enemy's eyes pass over empty ground and when to strike from the dust. Ask yourself, where in your life have you become a fixed position? Where could you move faster if you stopped defending that position altogether? What would happen if you stopped proving your strength and began using its flexibility instead? Those questions are not abstract. They are the essence of control. The person who can vanish from a losing fight without panic, who can step out of an argument before it traps him, who can let go of recognition to regain initiative. That person is practicing formlessness at its highest level. The ghost wins because it never fights the battle others prepare for. It lets them draw lines on the map, then walks through the spaces between. When you can do the same, when you can make your presence felt without being confined to a single place or image, you will understand why every rigid empire eventually falls and every adaptable one quietly endures. Every law of power carries its own poison. Formlessness, used without judgment, becomes drift. The same flexibility that protects you can also erase you. When nothing in you is fixed, you lose the ability to choose. The danger is subtle. What begins as adaptability ends as absence. A leader who changes too often teaches his followers not to trust. They sense that direction depends on mood, not design. So they wait instead of acting. And while they wait, momentum dies. A strategist who refuses all structure spends his energy reinventing steps that once worked. Each move feels original, but the pattern is chaos. Even water without gravity or a container evaporates. The purpose of this law was never to dissolve the self. It was to protect movement. The core, the inner aim, must remain steady. The outer forms are the ones you abandon when they no longer serve. Think of a sailor trimming sails to shifting winds. He changes angles, never the destination. Many confuse the trimming for aimlessness. In truth, it is precision. History shows both sides of the law. The early Mongols thrived because their fluid strategy served a single vision of conquest. Later, their heirs drowned in luxury, mistaking flexibility for license. The French Revolution began as adaptive rebellion and ended as terror because its leaders replaced every form but never built a guiding principle beneath. When motion becomes an addiction, power turns against itself. Without purpose, flexibility is only fear of commitment. In personal life, the same erosion happens quietly. People who reinvent themselves too often appear unreliable. No one invests in what may vanish tomorrow. The professional who never defines standards will drift from project to project, clever but rootless. The friend who adopts every opinion he hears ends as a mirror to whoever stands nearest. To be everywhere is to belong nowhere. For this reason, you must separate identity from behavior. Keep your motives, what you are trying to accomplish, constant. Let your methods change with circumstance. This balance between fixed aim and variable form is the true mastery of the law. Lose the aim, and formlessness becomes fog, shapeless, directionless, easy to disperse. There are moments when you must take form. Commitment, declaration, promise. These are tools of concentration. Use them sparingly but sincerely. When you take form, do it on your own timing, not when pressure forces it. The key difference between strength and rigidity is choice. Choose your shape. Never let others pour you into theirs. Ask yourself regularly, what part of my formlessness is strategy, and what part is avoidance? Am I adapting to reality or hiding from responsibility? The questions sound simple, but they are the only compass that prevents drift. The person who stops asking them eventually mistakes emptiness for freedom. In the end, form and formlessness are not enemies. They are the inhale and exhale of power. Form gathers energy. Formlessness releases it. You build structure to achieve, then you dissolve structure to move again. The rhythm must continue. Stay too long in either state and you suffocate. When water turns to fog, it loses contact with the earth. Keep enough weight to fall as rain again. Only then can you feed the next cycle of growth. There is a moment in every long pursuit of power when the noise fades. The strategies, the rivalries, the endless movement, all begin to quiet, and you start to see what was hidden beneath the surface of every victory and every defeat. The pattern is simple, though it takes a lifetime to recognize. Everything solid eventually cracks, and everything fluid eventually finds a path. The only constant in this game is change itself. You've now reached the last law, and it isn't a technique so much as a state of mind. It gathers every previous lesson into one idea. Survive by remaining in motion. Every other law, guarding reputation, mastering timing, concealing intention, playing with perception, depends on this. None of those principles work if you allow yourself to be trapped by them. The great error of most powerful people is that they grow proud of the system they've built. They fall in love with their own structure. They mistake the strategy for the strategist. Think of all those who rose high by mastering one rule and then fell by obeying it too faithfully. The manipulator who can no longer stop manipulating, even when honesty would serve him better. The ruler who isolates himself because secrecy once gave him strength. The visionary who clings to rebellion long after it becomes fashionable. Every law once worshipped becomes a form, and every form, when held too long, turns against its maker. Formlessness doesn't mean breaking rules for the sake of rebellion. It means using rules as tools, never as prisons. The laws of power were written to be understood, not obeyed blindly. They describe the patterns of behavior that repeat in every age: envy, ambition, fear, trust, deception, timing. Knowing those patterns lets you move within them without becoming one of them. You learn when to reveal, when to conceal, when to bend. You learn to see which law fits the moment and which must be reversed. Power is not the sum of these laws. It is the awareness that chooses among them. To be truly formless, you must learn to look at yourself the way a strategist studies a map. Step back. Observe how you respond when threatened, how you seek approval, how you react to loss. Each reaction is a possible chain, each habit a shape waiting to harden. Break them gently before someone else does it for you. The most dangerous kind of weakness is the one you can predict in yourself, but refuse to correct. In this sense, power is not about domination, but self-knowledge. The strong are not those who control others, but those who are not owned by their own nature. You will meet people who live inside fixed patterns, eternally the hero, the victim, the cynic, the loyalist. They defend these roles as if identity were armor, not realizing that armor also limits movement. If you can stay aware of your roles and set them down when the scene changes, you will remain free while they repeat their lines forever. Formlessness asks you to carry two opposing truths at once. The first, you must have a center, a purpose, something that keeps your motion from becoming drift. The second, you must never let that center become rigid. Inner steadiness, outer flexibility. You can be moral without being predictable, loyal without being blind, confident without being loud. The world will always demand clear definitions, but clarity often serves those who want to contain you. Let them wonder where you stand. Your results will answer better than your words. Think of the teachers of old, Socrates, Lao Tzu, the Buddha, Machiavelli. They taught through paradox because they understood that truth changes shape as understanding deepens. Every real teacher eventually stops giving answers and starts giving questions. That's where you are now. The final law is not a command, but an invitation to keep questioning every form you build, including these laws themselves. Ask yourself, which of the 47 habits before this one has become your comfort? Which rule have you started to believe too deeply? The more certain you are of a law, the more dangerous it becomes. The law of concealment, for instance, is vital until the moment honesty wins more trust. The law of absence creates respect until it begins to look like weakness. Every law has a point of reversal. Formlessness is what lets you see that point and turn before it turns you. At the beginning of this journey, you were learning how to gather power, how to make others see your value, how to defend against manipulation, how to win ground in a world of endless competition. But the final lesson is simpler. Once you have power, you must learn to let it flow through you rather than around you. The less you grip it, the longer it lasts. The master of power treats control like a muscle he can contract or relax at will. The apprentice clings to it until it stiffens in his hands. There is a quiet humility at the heart of this. No matter how much you know, the world will always shift faster than your understanding. Every generation changes the rules. Every rival brings a new rhythm. The only way to remain relevant is to keep dissolving and reforming. That's not surrender, it's intelligence. When water meets stone, it doesn't argue. It flows until the stone wears away. Eventually, every structure, kingdom, ideology, personal brand becomes obsolete. But the mind that remains adaptable can pass through each age like a thread through fabric, visible only to those who look closely. That is the power behind all power, the ability to outlive your own form. If you have followed these laws honestly, you should feel both stronger and lighter. You should know how to lead without force, to influence without exposure, to withdraw without loss. You should see that mastery isn't domination, but freedom from dependency. Freedom from the need to appear powerful. True strength doesn't shout. It moves quietly, adjusting shape, impossible to trap. So this is where the mirror clears. Look at yourself. Not the image others see, not the story you've told, but the shifting intelligence underneath. That is what survives when every crown has fallen, every title forgotten, every law reversed. Power stripped of display. is simply the ability to remain composed while everything changes. When you leave this last page, the laws are no longer rules. They are mirrors showing how people behave when they chase power without understanding it. Use them to read the world, not to imitate it. Study form, then move beyond form. Learn the rules, then learn the rhythm that makes rules irrelevant. Remember, what can be named can be resisted. What can be seen can be struck. Be steady enough to stay whole, and light enough to change shape. In the end, the highest power is not control over others. It is freedom from definition. That is what it means to assume formlessness.